I think this is one of the most interesting panels as of today. It's called Retail Investment. Under transformation, we have really great guests. I'm sure you know many of them. You've heard about them. So our panel discussion will take about 1 hour and 20 minutes. This is what I'm telling the speakers. In the first place, we will cover the most topical issues of this area because retail investments are the major trend, not only with us, I think it's across the globe. So it's the major participants of these trends who will be leading the discussion on that. And public IPO will also be discussed. And I think that we will take some questions from the audience. Let us start with introducing myself. I'm Nurgalin Nurmahambetov. I have worked in half of the companies that are represented here in the audience. I'm mainly a freelance. Now, let us start with the recent company I worked for at Jusan Invest, and the chair of the board of Jusan Invest, Maxim Kabanov, is with us, very weathered, very experienced person in the sector. I remember when you first came to Kazakhstan, I believe in 2006 or 2009, you were witnessing our fast growth and fast decline, Kazkom, BTA. So I hope that he will disclose his vision. Halyk Finance, chair of the board, Farhad Akhonov. Farhad has been in the market for quite a while. I think he was dealing with invest marketing, bonds, and securities that have been issued in our securities market. I think he took part in all of that, sometimes only as a single participant. We wonder what he would tell us about the retail market. And the third person is the chair of the board of Freedom Finance, Sergei Lukyanov, our major broker. Timur Torlov is someone we see very often, but Sergei is not someone like is a rare catch. And chair of the board of People's Exchange, Astana International Exchange, Rinat Bekturov. Can we call it People's Exchange? Yeah, we must. Unfortunately, Kasey is not represented here, but and our first participant, someone I have known for a while, our regulator, Director of the Department for Policy and Strategy at AFSA, Ainur Alpas, and the major gladiator in our market, fighting for minority investors, for minority shareholders, in fighting our seniors, Danyar Timirbayev. Rinat Bekturov is with us for a half of our discussion for the next 50 minutes, so let us start with them. Yesterday, the head of state made a statement about IPO. And the key point he made is that it must become accessible. The first IPO was, if I'm not mistaken, was promoted by Kaspochta to make it affordable. So what are the novelties that you propose for new IPOs to become more accessible? Thank you, Nurgali. First of all, I would like to greet all of our speakers, our guests, our audience online, and congratulate our media workers, journalists with their professional holiday. It's very important that retail users get the information about this market. Therefore, we really praise our colleagues from the media. So you were right to mention that yesterday there was a council on IFC governance, and the chair of this council, the head of state, voiced several important theses about the IPO and the market. He talked about Saudi Aramco, about local issuances and local offerings. And these are the ideas that we've been pitching to the government. And it's really important that we have heard those theses from our president. In my social media, I have written that today we are presenting a new function in our Tabis application. It's hand in hand with another thesis that has been voiced yesterday, that we need digitalization in retail, that the Kazakh citizens must have access to stock markets, to IPO, that Kazakh people must have an opportunity to take part in IPO, get their dividends, and that must be a simplified procedure. You must know about Tabiz, our application. It's a distribution channel that we have built. We offer ETNs, but there is no secondary market. So we do not compete with our brokers here. It's the first step for a retail investor to a stock market. Furthermore, if they want to go to a secondary market to buy some shares, they go to our brokers, and our application has the relevant links to the brokers' activities. We are expanding this channel, and we hope for IPO to happen, and Tabis could support that along with Post. We are partners with them. We interact very well. Could you show my slide, please? So what we're offering to expand the distribution channel and the opportunities for all Kazakhstanis to take part in IPO, including via Tabis. On the left, you can see our common public offering channels via our brokers, not only brokers, but the trade members, as we call them. They may be various organizations who are participants of AIX. You can see all of their logos on the screen right now. So what are the new things that we are offering via our Tabis application? You can make direct subscription. When the company itself is an issuer, receives an application and meets it directly, not via a broker. So the investor doesn't have to open a broker's account at this point. But with secondary trading, you need to use a broker's assistance. This will be available via Tabis not only for IPO, for quasi-state. It can be used for any primary offering. So what is the best feature here? It works 24/7. You need phone, internet, ID, and bank card, and you can become an investor. Plus to that, we have worked with Post a lot on integration, because we understand that not all of the Kazakhstanis, I think, would find it convenient to work in Tabis for certain reasons. Therefore, direct subscription will be available via Post. Branches, they can be brokers, but for direct interactions, they will also be able to operate. That would allow to engage many Kazakhstanis as investors in IPOs of quasi-state companies, and they can then further find their path to the stock market. Thank you, Danyar. Since Danyar has been an active speaker on IPO, so what do you think about this new mechanism of public IPO? People's IPO, would they engage investors? The forecast is about like 500,000. So first of all, let me greet everyone, congratulate everyone on the Day of Journalism. I would like to congratulate the media representatives here. I've been a part of the media myself. About People's IPO, I would like to say that the experience of public IPOs of Kigok and Kastransoil, who were the pioneers in this, has shown that People's IPO gives great growth of interest in stock market and opening brokers' accounts. So the foundation was laid during the first offerings. We have lost some impetus as a country. I'm talking about the chances for developing the internal market for that. We have lost some pace at that moment. You've called me a gladiator, but it's not exactly like that. The association is of minority shareholders in Kazakhstan are 300 Spartans, I'd rather say, not gladiators. But the finale of that movie wasn't really great, but we hope that uh, we will succeed. I don't know how it will end, but we have constructive dialogue with Samru Kazana. This April, we presented our initiatives, public control over national companies using the instruments of the stock market. It has a slightly different name, but it doesn't change the meaning. I think our initiative is quite important. A couple of weeks ago, we offered to Samru Kazana our another idea, the domestic IPO of Kazmunaygas following the experience of Saudi Aramco. We think that this has been successful experience, and we can see that Samru Kazana has manifested an ability to listen. They didn't have this before, but now we see it. Therefore, I think our initiatives, they are along the lines of Jana Kazakhstan project. The government is turning its head slowly towards, I don't know, or turning its ear towards people. They tend to listen more right now. And we can see a realization of many ideas proposed by the public. And we can see on the part of Samru Kazana, constructive approach. We have at least started a conversation with them. We continue it. But the only thing to note here is that sometimes in that conversation, now and then, especially during our last Zoom call, we hear this word external consultants. So Samru Kazana is still often mentioning external consultants. So my question is, what is the priority for Samru Kazana? External consultants or developing the internal stock market of Kazakhstan, or the interests of the citizens of Kazakhstan that must have access to the natural resources of the country? They must have an opportunity to control the national companies, not via public councils that I think are formal. I'm not talking about the people who take part in those public councils directly. I'm not trying to characterize them, but I think that BODs of the companies are more efficient tools because they have actual leverage to make some changes in the company. So if we can go through minority shareholders to pull those levers, we will see the specific, concrete steps to building a new republic. Thank you so much. Brilliant as usual, Daniel. This is why we love you. Let us talk with our brokers, Sergey, Farhad, and Maxim. I will ask you just one question. Because our retail is not knocked out, but maybe knocked down this year, especially with the beginning of this year and the following developments, the market declines, and so on. So what do you think? What is the mood of retailers? Will they take part in those IPOs? Because you, I think, the best source of knowledge about that because you deal with that every day. So, Sergey, let's start with you. Our Kazakh companies, will they show any interest in that? Of course they will. First of all, the retail goes to the market when there are some significant events, when there are some extremities. We see a market inflow on the part of investors. We see when there is either a big growth or a big decline. These are the moments when the people come to stock market to make investments. So IPO is one of the extremities. When you can see across the board that the media are describing the opportunities of investment into the major assets of your country, into the national companies, the services of which are provided to the population every day. This is a great challenge. It's really interesting. People engage in IPO. People's IPO is always a driver of progress. Therefore, they will come, I'm sure. I fully support Sergey. And I would add that under these circumstances, Kazakhstani investors, I think, would take a different look at Kazakhstani assets, especially the major ones, the big ones, unlike foreign investors. What we see right now is not just some slight decline in securities, in Eurobonds that we see with the background when the stakes are high, when the central banks are fighting inflations, when the key basic rates are being raised, when the rate of return is being increased along with the price growth. So what the fundamental thing I see, the key factor, is the panic, fear, and excitement. International investors are selling securities covering the risks for entire regions. If you look at the Eurobond situation, Kazakhstani issuers, our national companies, when they had like a repayment of 3 to 4 years, they sell at 6 to 7% in dollars. In second-tier banks, our dollar deposits pay like 1% or something. So the difference is like 7 times, but the risks are like comparable, I would say, or maybe even lower. Well, Tengiz Chevroil, Kazmunaygas, and second-tier banks, you see, they can be compared. So it just emphasizes the idea that today Kazakhstani assets for Kazakhstani investors are very attractive. Therefore, I think that at least for big national companies, there will be high interest on the part of possible investors. Maxim, what about you? I agree with my colleagues, but the major thing here is that the issuers, we lack Kazakhstani issuers. The clients are asking us, what do we buy at local exchanges and AIX? What kind of local securities we can buy? But we don't see many. This is the thing that we should have done long ago. IPO, national IPO. Even Buffett said, buy the companies that you use. Therefore, local investors, I'm sure, would buy. They will have interest towards national assets. The market grows and falls. This is a permanent process, constant movement, growth and decline. There is no endless decline. They will be at dawn after dusk. I'm sure this will fly, and this is something to be done. And not just a single IPO, not just KMG. All national companies must start their IPO, like Astana, like KTZ, all of them. Because indeed, local issuers inside Kazakhstan are like almost absent. Fingers on my one palm are enough to count them. And the demand that we see, looking at the financial penetration in stock markets, like 3% of economically active population has brokers accounts, unlike neighboring Russia, where 25% of economically active population has broker accounts. Therefore, we have a space to grow, and this is something that will be able to boost the engagement. At least 100 tenge, but you will invest in IPO. At least 1,000 tenge. You can do that. This is something that must become the main tune of the public outreach. Our financial groups, our government must tell the story, that this is a positive story that the entire world is following. And we are now worse than the entire world on this. Talking about motivation for a retail investor. So what we're used to is that they are mainly chasing profits. So what's the situation with your investors, with your retail investors? Under these conditions, how do they work? How do you work with them? What is the motivation for them? What is something that drives them, like the retail investors at Jusan Invest? The assets that 6 months or 12 months ago cost cheaper, the quality hasn't changed much. We are most likely facing stagflation. In the United States, we will see a decline in growth trends. If we if we set aside the speculation activities, if you create your position for your portfolio, if you invest regularly, this is a good time when you can add into your portfolio some notes or shares at very good prices. They will be done before any dusk, after any dusk, and the markets will restore. The good example of that, not many people know about it, during World War II, the markets were working. Financial markets, they were operating. The American market was trading, it was growing. Even European securities were traded until a certain point, after which they would renew their trading. So the financial market will be operating. So I think before a nuclear war, everything will be working. Oh, God forbid. Now we're straight to nuclear war. Let us be more optimistic. So Farhad, you're more of an investment banker. So did you like working with the retail? What are the trends? What do you see? So what's your vision? I think you do have a certain vision at this moment. We see some trends, we do. Like any company that has just, started. Well, the retail segment in Kazakhstan has just started developing, so we are going through the same stages that have been walked through by our neighbors or developed countries. But we are moving at a higher pace, at a faster pace, due to globalization, digitalization. The supporting trends are digitalization, first of all. It's obvious that one phone has it all, your documents, your IDs. You can do some banking operations. So what's the difference here if we talk about the brokers' services? We see high inflow of retail investors via digitalization, and we see that on average our clients are young, people under 40, and the average check is not that high, which is also okay, because young people, they make attempts, they're experimenting, they don't have very high incomes, unlike adults. We see some concentration both in deposit holders, in broker investments. So young people are very active in trading, but they, at the moment, don't have too much money. But with time, they will be more, and the money will come with the experience. And this is our other trend that we see, like variability in financial literacy among our clients, especially young ones. We have the clients who know some structural products, the funds, ETFs. They are making attempts to diversify their portfolios. There are some clients that are just buying based on some recommendations from brokers, but this is like quite a normal stage. Financial literacy is something that doesn't come at once or overnight with some digitalization. So literacy takes time. It takes the client time to understand what kind of challenges come along with the stock market. So we're just accumulating knowledge. And I would like to add to the previous question on the topic, just a couple of words. I agree with what my colleagues said, what Maxim said. I would only add that the retail investor stories must be very intelligible and simple. So I don't look at people's IPO as at a silver bullet. It must be a complex program, and it's great that we can engage people into privatization, especially of national assets. But the big issue here is that if we talk about the mass segment, about retail investors, unfortunately, this retail investor in most cases does not understand the specific features of national companies, what they are. They cannot look with their own eyes in the moment into this company and see that, for instance, its operations and performance is bad or it's good, what can they say by just looking at the office of Kazmunegas or Kazatomprom? Who would let them into Kazatomprom deposits? They just don't understand those stories.
I often ask retail investors, what do you know about KIGOC? How does KIGOC make money? And out of retail investors who have KIGOC shares, not many of them tell you about the company's specifics. So for the full-fledged development of this market, the history must be clear. First of all, something that a client says, what my colleague have already said, buy things you already use. For example, a trading mall. You possess shares in a trading mall. You come there and you see it physically that some of its territory is idle, which means next month will not receive dividends from rent and EBITDA shall reduce. So probably such companies are not doing quite okay, but this is the procedure you cannot perform in regards to Kazatomprom or KIGOC. Or, for example, a big brand, a big store. They want to modernize the whole second floor. They want to bring more people to the trade mall. That means more cash flow. That means more territory to be bought from the trading mall. So such stories from a retail segment should be present in the market to motivate investors to dive into retail segment and enter securities trade. Thank you very much. So Halyk bets on the youth, I understand. But the youngsters today are running to the moon. What do you want? I want to go to the moon. So in regards to Sergey, you've worked in Russia for a long time. How come that our economies are similar, understanding is similar, education systems are almost the same, but you are running ahead while we are lagging behind? So let's talk about it. How did we reach such life? What has changed? So let us start from prehistory. The society is not a homogeneous formation. Who do we work for? We work for rich people. Things are clear with them. Rich people invest. They have plants, steamers, like in fairy tales. There is a substratum of poor people. Things are clear with them as well. They do not have money and nothing to discuss with them in the sphere of investments. Those people are trying to pull both ends together. This is the segment that the government works a lot with. But if things are wrong with that substratum, something similar to January events may take place. That is why the government scans that substratum. So who do we have left? The well-known middle class. Middle class is the active stratum, the most active stratum, with some life attitudes, political attitudes. They open up businesses, they create vacancies and commission companies. So these people are the investors, the ones we interact with most. Let's call them depositors. They have money, they think how to save money, and they seek financial services, not necessarily brokerage. That could be a bank that helps you to invest into deposits. That could be insurance, life insurance, you invest into pension, and that could be brokerage. When you assemble your own portfolio, long-term, mid-term, short-term, everyone has his own horizon for investment. So middle class. The middle class is the substratum. This is our target audience, and here we have two ways to develop retail investors. We need to develop the middle class in this republic. What do we need? We need conditions for business. you were accurate to say that we have uniform customs union inclusive of several countries, but then that customs territory transformed into a bigger single economic space, and within that economic space we have several emission centers, several central banks, national banks, and those banks have various policies. One zone, various policies. Take example from the previous year, before the January events, there is such a thing as the base interest rate. Basically, the interest rate that you charge on credits you give to lower level banks. And lower level banks, they credit the economic activity. They inject money into factories. They give credits to buy or build plants and factories. So this is the policy of our northern neighbor, is that they were reducing the interest rate. It was a long-term policy performed by the Russian government. It was made available for everybody. They were cutting interest rates on mortgage and doing other signals to the business community. There is such a postulate. If you set up a business, for example, a dairy factory, approximately 40% of your expenditures will be credits. So the more cheaper are credits, the more plants you can open up in a given area. Let's take a look at the average salary. That is no indicator if a credit is 2 times as cheaper. For example, in Russia in the beginning of the year, interest rate was 5%. In Kazakhstan, it was 10%. That is why if you want to set up a dairy factory, you want to open it up in Russia, produce dairy in Russia, but sell your products in Kazakhstan. So this is our economy, and when we bring the commodities from neighboring countries, we bring the inflation into our country, because our tenge is closely tied up to the Russian ruble, to the merit of such a policy. Such a policy does exist, good or bad, but it is like this. Basically, we didn't have any reference models 1 to 6, 6 to 1. This is all because we are bringing commodities from Russia. It is more profitable to make commodities in Russia. Just go to the store and take a look at the ice cream. Russian ice cream is more popular because its transportation to Kazakhstan is cheaper. Now let's talk about another part. When we have a big interest rate, a high interest rate, the banks shall export the same, they shall cascade the same rate on deposits. So if your interest rate is 15%, why do you need securities market? You have everything in stability. That's a very good idea for investments. I am more than sure that 700 departments of Kaspost could be a wonderful penetration into the population for retail investors. So you can attract the client base and then we can divide it among ourselves. The more activity in the market, the better. Some people could like Jusan, others will like freedom finance. So I started talking about depository interest rate. What has been happening in Russia? They had 2 factors. The interest rate, central banks interest rate, or gave clear tendency that the interest rate would go down. The thing is, it's not Turkey. In Turkey, you can say that tomorrow interest rate will decrease immediately, but Russian government made a long-term signal to the society that the interest rate would go down. This is how it was happening in Russia, and because of that, because people saving the money in the banks, in the bank accounts, they were encountering situations when the time was coming to the end, but the banks were telling them that next year interest rate would be going down, and this is it. So the clients start thinking, what the hell? I have gotten used to the fact that in process of time I'm supposed to make more and more, but now I come to the bank and the bank tells me I will make less. So people were impelled to go to financial markets. They start evaluating other assets, securities, for example, because they're nonetheless valuable and stable. And when they start dealing with emissions, with securities, they make conclusion that it's not that complicated. So we ourselves are pressing people towards the financial market. Likewise, it happened in Russia. Today they have more than 15 million retail investors. That is more than the whole total economically active population in Kazakhstan. So this is what Russian government did. And the second thing, the infrastructure must be in place, ready and prepared. If you have all the conditions but no infrastructure, the retail investors will go to some other country, United States, Europe, Asia, elsewhere. They will be investing there if there is no infrastructure here. Thank you. When Rinat says Mr. Pirmatov next time, he can pass those words to him. Now, Rinat, let's talk with you. Some clear recommendations we want to hear from you. As to the exchange, what are the trends in retail business and exchanges, particularly this year? 6 months, things are going down. Kaspi went from 120 down to 50. Well, initially it was 140, now it's 120. Bitcoin went down from 60 to 20. So there is no way to the moon, as it turns out. So what would be your advice to investors? I'm confident that they address you. They think that you're a senior specialist in securities. Well, we tell them immediately that we don't give investment advice. We only create infrastructure. But if to talk about trends, in 2021, we had 160,000 deposits. Now we have more than 300 to 350,000 accounts. Despite all the events and fluctuations, the retail investment business is growing. And Sergey has said, and the other speakers have said it, where can the middle class go now? On one side, you have real estate that is customary, and this is where you can anticipate 7% growth. At least at the end of the day, you get breaks. On the other side, you have financial pyramid, from which you shall never return your money, but you can make a certain amount. And in between the two, there is a desert. Deposits somewhere in between. So in the principle, nothing there. Our objective here would be to offer some alternatives to the retail investors where they can invest money, and we can work to improve their financial literacy. And Farhad has said that retail business is growing younger, and today becoming an investor is a fashionable thing. Today, being educated means being financially aware and proficient. Instead of buying a conventional Toyota Camry, although a Camry is a good investment, in addition to real estate, and yesterday with foreigners we have discussed it, they ask a question, who will buy all those flats? Investors will, because the thing is, unfortunately, in some economic sectors, inflation shall be eating all interest rates. If I'm not mistaken, people who were investing into real estate in Almaty in 2006, are collecting nothing today. So in Tabis, in our brokerage, we can see so realistically, this market cannot extend any longer. As Maxim has said, after night you have the sunrise and the day grows longer. If you take a look at any S&P curve, at the history, you probably will remember there were 30 serious corrective actions taken, but the market still unwinds. So together with the participants, we are working to increase financial literacy of the population, all of our activities for the sake of having some products before our future securities emittents are preparing themselves. So let's talk to our regulator, AFCA. Ainur, our population is quite young, 29 years of age. Not very sophisticated people. So we are all veterans here, but the majority of our co-citizens are young, immature people. So within the regulating structure, will you have any softening? We remember a lot of feedback that regulators sometimes are being way much too robust. Maybe you can find that golden middle when you will observe the interests of retail investors at the same time, not to the bias of the brokers. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, first of all, for inviting myself to this forum. We are happy to have this panel session involving regulators. Our main objective is to protect the rights of the investors and users of financial services. I want to tell about the role of Astana Financial Services Authority. This is a young regulator. We have existed for 5 years now. We are an independent regulating body that ensures financial stability, and we perform the supervision of activities of all financial institutions in the center. Also, the regulator may perform activities in the sphere of regulation of financial services, and as you have correctly said, two our main regulatory targets out of 10 are to deal with protection of investors, protection of consumers of financial services, as well as development. What kind of development? We want to ensure here in our center the climate in which financial markets shall work honestly, effectively, and transparently. This is written down in our publicly available rules. Why am I telling all that to you? Because not many people are informed enough about the role of the regulator, what kind of mechanisms we have to protect investors in the center. I'm sorry, but looks like everything is in English language. 29 years. Will you have translation to the Russian language, to the Kazakh language maybe? At present stage, all regulatory acts in the sphere of financial services are available in the English. Constitutional law is available in the 3 languages, but of course we will translate regulatory materials. This is quite a good observation. We do have the language barrier. Also, I wanted to talk about some tendencies that regulators envisage to the global market today. That is the growth of retail investors because of a number of transformational processes taking place on planet Earth. Pandemic itself, then, as has been said earlier, low interest rates, which makes the market more attractive, retail investor market more attractive. Such instruments have CFDs, cryptocurrencies and others, as well as technological achievements. But technological achievements, we need to understand that companies like Tabis, they have a license to perform their activity and attract retail investors. They treat clients properly and they provide all information for the management decision making. But at the same time, the technological achievements result in various Ponzi schemes, pyramids. Today's social network are attracting more people into such fraudulent schemes. In this case, the financial regulator assumes responsibility for dissemination of proper information. Also, technological achievements transform the products themselves. Today we have cryptocurrency, crypto assets, crypto exchange platforms. The nature of those financial instruments is altering today. And as has been already pointed out here, global regulators today are observing a demographic tendency in the sphere of retail investment. Those investors are younger, and those investors are investing into highly risky businesses. So as a regulator, we will approach the risks, particularly what kind of new risks are coming out, how those risks impact our regulatory business. Today we have a lot of new types of fraudulent activities, mis-selling practices, aggressive sales, disinformation of retail investors. And the third factor, volatility of the market. You have correctly said that the role of the regulator is to mitigate against those risks, and here we work in three directions. The first one is better financial literacy of the population. All information is available on our corporate website, in social networks. We make explanations. We have investor guidance. Any retail investor can read in any of the three languages based on which you can make a motivated decision. Also, we run a lot of activities of the kind like today, World Investor Week, each October. It's been our 5th year now that we have it. There we highlight all main risks, tendencies, and how retail investors can wake their levels up in the sphere of financial literacy. Second mechanism we employ is the conduct risk. This is a brand new term for the Kazakh practice. We know that in Kazakhstan we regulate financial organizations by means of imposing regulations, entering charter funds. All market interaction mechanisms are by means of some quantitative mechanisms, but in our center we are paying great attention and promoting the proper model of behavior of financial institutions, investors, and consumers. Conduct risk is regulated by our AIFC conduct business of rules that requires diligent behavior in regards to clients, and there we have written down a number of key requirements we impose on financial entities. And the third thing, we publish all of our enforcement cases that we already have accumulated, unfortunately, in Kazakhstan in regards to such companies who applied disciplinary measures. We publish information about such perpetrators on our corporate website to inform all investors about potential threats. So in this case, we are mitigating, we are protecting investors at the same time, promoting our own market development. Wonderful. I apologize. Yes, Renat, looks like Renat is going to leave us. The last question for you. We are all in IT today. So what is new in an exchange from the standpoint of IT, maybe new products, some apps to facilitate the life of your clients. Well, first of all, I wanted to report that all modern exchanges, including ours, are in virtue IT companies. So I repeat myself all the time that the first regulated exchange that came to the cloud technology was AIX. We had operations when we didn't have internet communication. And the second platform is Tabase, deserves another noticing. There we have added more functions. Everything depends on how the market changes, and of course we will be making announcements about what we are going to do. Also, we are thinking about potential IPO. This is a part of our direct subscription. So these are the key scopes of activities in this sphere. Today, all of your bank accounts, all of your securities, your whole life is there. Thank you. I have to leave. I apologize. I will see all of you during these Astana Finance Days. Okay, let's come to our favorite brokerage. Recently, when I was dealing with education and training, I heard a lot of questions. Where do we open up an account? What kind of brokerage do we select? It's up to you, but still tell me, colleagues, today we have three of you, three brokerage companies. So we need to open up an account with you, which is quite a complicated process. Am I not mistaken? I think Freedom today have a wonderful trading platform. Jusan have their own platform today, and Halyk Finance, Halyk Invest, to be accurate. Interesting. It happened easily. It made our life convenient. This is the full digitization. So based on that, I have a question. So where do we move further with our digitization? Maybe some novelties you want to introduce, and in general, what do you think? Digital, is it our absolute future divine world, or are we losing the typical brokerage information exchange habits today? Well, the world is moving ahead. We are all going digital. Without technological progress, there is no progress. In the past, to set up an account, you would have to come to office physically, provide a whole package of printed documents, and in a couple of days, if at all lucky, you would receive your account. But then you would have, every time you want to run any transaction, you will have to come to the brokerage office. Today you have an application on your smartphone, you have your account. Please replenish and proceed to work. That has simplified our life. That boosted up the increase in the number of brokers and investors. So where onwards do we move from here? Of course, today we are talking here about economic terminology, some indicators, but at the same time, 90% of our population are totally ignorant in regards to that terminology. How do we want to communicate our message to those people if we use such intimidating terms? If you come to a doctor and he intimidates you with some terms, how do you fail? Whilst a doctor can tell you in a primitive language, man, you are okay. So our main target here is to disseminate as much information as possible in the most primitive language. Tell complicated things by means of day-to-day basic language. We pay a lot of attention to the so-called Jusan Academy, where apprentice investors can familiarize themselves with the markets, bank deposits, credits, fraudulent activities after all, because today this is becoming a big problem realistically. We receive a lot of complaints about fraudulent activities. Yesterday, my wife almost fell victim to one such a rascal who wanted her to transfer money somewhere. People are ignorant about the finance, and that impacts our life. If we as financial institutions do not enlighten people, enlighten society, we will be losing potential clients. We are making a shortcut longer. And at the same time, we need to start from younger ages. Recently, we have commissioned Jusan Junior platform. This is when a juvenile can be an investor. Children learn how to save and where to direct the money. This is not as much about spending money as it is about saving money, A to Z, so that in 15 to 20 years, today's juveniles have evolutionized into people capable of accumulating capitals and augmenting capitals. The next stage of evolution in the finance. Thank you. Farhad, I have a question for you. It is growing popular to have ecosystems after Kaspi, so we all love ecosystem. Halyk has 3 ecosystems, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so I understand all of you are in one ecosystem entitled bank. Basically, we all are eventually coming to the bank ecosystem. What kind of strategic interaction will you have with the banks and with investment companies? What kind of promotion do you envisage? One account, one depository? Realistically, yes, at present we are integrating brokerage at the home bank platform. That's not a big secret now. And that basic function is now being made available in the application. And that's a classy thing. That's a wonderful thing. First of all, because the regulator permitted the brokers, the banks, to deal with the brokerage starting from the previous year. That is a great thing from the standpoint of the client pathway. The brokers that are currently licensed by the national banks are impelled to work in the infrastructure which appears rather complicated. A broker is an intermediary. He works with the money. He saves the money. He needs to keep the accounting in a custodian bank, and the custodian bank may not be affiliated with your shareholder bank. For example, ourselves as Halyk Finance use custodian services from an exterior bank, not a Halyk bank. So replenishment of a brokerage account, if it's in US dollars, you keep money in one bank, then you are impelled to replenish your brokerage account, which means the custodian account in another bank. Money runs for 2 or 3 days. That is totally inconvenient. When that system works at a uniform platform, the main facility is the speed. Imagine that you are using a banking application that you use on day-to-day basis, by means of which you can set up a brokerage account almost immediately, replenish it almost immediately, replenish it regardless the source, whether it's Kazakh tenge or US dollars, Apple Pay, Google Pay, and all other options that you can see on your screen. Choose a source, choose a deposit, choose a card. Everything will be integrated with the brokerage business. That will be speedy, convenient, and cheaper for the client. So the main advantage here is we are talking about securities market where the time is of utmost importance. At 11 o'clock at night, lying on your sofa, you can see that the Facebook shares are going down. You need to buy it telegraphically now But you know that before you replenish your brokerage account, 2 days will pass and Facebook might collapse. So when you see such an opportunity, you want to make it as telegraphically as possible in a matter of 5 minutes. This is something that is coming to us, or we are coming to it. Of course, independently, we will have to think about the segmenting of the clients. That's an inevitable thing. Today, all brokers, all regulators are encountering that problem. Retail segment has always been small, peculiar. Can you imagine a big cinema hall about which only 10 individuals were aware and they enjoyed attending a big cinema? You can smoke, drink alcohol, you can spit on the floor, but suddenly the doors open and a kindergarten comes with the principal and they tell you, stop smoking, stop consuming alcohol, please clean up. This is something that brokers and regulators are suffering from now. A new segment is ramming into our life. We need to supervise it, we need to control it, and we cannot cheat on it. We need to impose at the same time more robust limits on it. So most definitely there will be such services, such products that shall cease to be available. This is the downside of many novelties. A lot of people think that retail development of new products, particularly international products, will bring only benefits, but that is not true to 100%. International products are quite robustly segmented and designed for qualified institutional investors. At present, we don't have such investors. Our investors can go and buy euro bonds from Casse in the Western countries. A physical person shall not be capable of doing that. He must be qualified. He must dispose of a certain amount of money. So very soon novelties will come. We will shut down a lot of doors and the regulators will tell us, hi lads, today I am separating one segment from another, qualified investor from a primitive investor. You have proven to myself that you are worth buying certain products and you are not, etc., etc. This is a normal future. Thank you very much. Sergey, let's turn to you. You are experiencing great digitalization in the bank, in the whole group of companies. So in regards to freedom, that is not a great secret that your IPO has been a success, particularly retail. All of your new platforms are a success. 19 to 20 was a successful period for your company. So strategically, how is it like to you now? Are you going to be in the same ecosystem with the bank, or you want to move in different directions? It is impossible to walk in different directions because a shareholder shall not allow us to do so, and the bank shall not. But when you work in the team, you achieve a lot more. Farhad has told us that life is getting more and more complicated, and he is an experienced veteran who every day faces situations when he has to address to a custodian bank for infrastructure. And the thing is that in this country, there are quite a few big banks capable of running high transactions. How do the bank behave?
But it is considered that indeed it is the legislation that is so fragmented. It's like a patchwork made of many patches. And it turns out that indeed, if you that you cannot use your own infrastructure, that makes you a rascal or a fraud at the moment. If I use my own infrastructure, I am considered to be a rascal and so on. But how can you ensure building one's own service? We can build our own custodian in the country, but who can use that? We cannot use the custodian for hours. If you look at our competitors, they already have a solution. They use mutual infrastructure. And there aren't many licenses for custodians. There is no market. And those patches, they need to be removed. It's great that we have this new jurisdiction, IFC, where you can do that, where you can use your own systems. And this is a great advantage for the ecosystem. So answering this question, I must say that we are glad and we are forced to at the same time to work as a team and build our own ecosystem. If we look at investment marketplaces, I don't remember any successful cases of its working. I see attempts to build investment supermarkets, but you don't face them every day. If we talk about the ecosystem term is adhering to CASPI usually. It's a kind of a closed loop. CASPI at the moment is a kind of a loan conveyor in a black box of an ecosystem, but this thing works and it's super popular in this country. But if we build a financial ecosystem for investment products only, it's not needed actually, because it's not something that you interact with every day. You may have some automobile insurance. You pay it once a year and forget about it. You don't even remember what it is in your application. If it's ever integrated, it should be integrated in a full-fledged system. And Freedom, as other colleagues, is building an ecosystem. We're building super apps, and we hope to present it this year, one way or another. And along with financial products, there will be some everyday use products for the users to apply this app, this ecosystem every day. So we will have another super app. This is great. You see, our timer shows 12 minutes left. There will be a blitz session. The timer is for us. I'm asking you a question, and you will have 30 seconds to reply. I don't know about AFSA. There will be interesting questions, the market-related questions. You may skip them. Let us start with this end. Let us start with Daniel. So question 1, what's better, passive or active investment? Depending on the term, time frame, active plus passive. So what's best? What would you buy? So active investment gives a higher profit for a broker, but passive gives you savings, and this is for a long term. Okay, great. Farhad, for you, what do you prefer, active or passive? You personally, what do you think? For me personally, it's passive. So like Eurobonds and stuff, like indices, ETFs, like baskets of funds, and so on. So what about you, Sergey? Passive or active? Well, my personal perspective, I've been in the market for a while. I've tried both. There is no way to do active investment if you have a job. For instance, if you sit at a working meeting and you see some great investment idea, and when you're out of your work meeting, everybody has already forgot about that opportunity. I've been working on several horizons of investments, and at some point, I knew that it's only a week. A weekend, you take 3 hours to analyze your investment portfolio to see what happened during the week. You can see that there are some products that you should have sold earlier in the week. And those horizons have been working like good for me. But then I have lost that small amount of time because along with work there is also family. So long-term investment is my personal preference. So what about you, Daniel? Passive or active? If you talk about investment, activity is always good, and association supports active positions. It's not about association, it's about your personal approach. We always support activity, active lifestyle. But as for investment, and the devil is in the details here. I will give you one example. If we talk about passive, it's mainly ETFs. If you buy like uranium euro in ETFs in 2012, in fall, I think it was launched before Fukushima, it was about $170, and today it's traded at like $29. So throughout this time, very passively, we've been watching what was happening with this ETF. So the devil is in the details, depending on what you buy. So is there a bear or bull? Do we buy Tesla today or Bitcoin? It's bull or bear. We hope it will become a bull, but looking at all of the indicators, it's bear. You remember 2008, we don't see bankruptcies much. Well, there is no bankruptcies, but the world has changed. It's been over a decade. The world has changed. It's still a bear. What would you recommend to your favorite clients? Invest little by little permanently. Give one name. Share Tesla or Tesla for now is probably something you shouldn't buy in the meantime, but something related to defense like Lockheed Martin or something. It's not us, it's the world that makes us do those things. Yeah, you're so military today. So Farhad, I understand that bonds and investment banking is so interesting, but let us talk about shares. I always recommend Halyk Bank shares, like net profit 1 billion for a year. Would you recommend the shares of Halyk Bank? Well, sure, I would. Apart from Halyk Bank, what other recommendations? Would you recommend Kaspi? I'm not commenting on that. Next question, please. Is that a blitz or interrogation? It is a blitz. So let's do Sergey. Sergey, two issuers. I already talk about specific names. Two names. Well, it's not the best approach, to ask a question. Well, look, we are all individuals. We have our own investment horizons, our own situations. For how long? Like 3 years? I will ask you a bulk of questions before I give you any recommendations. And you see, there is a regulator, by the door. There are many questions I would ask, a questionnaire. We will look at your investment horizon, and only afterwards we will give you the answer that would be written for you very specifically. So do we start buying now? Well, nothing prevents you from buying, depending on your horizon. You mentioned 140, right? Well, that depends when you enter. It's all individual. It varies from case to case. So, Danyar, do we buy shares when there is public IPO? Well, I wanted to talk about this people's IPO, like a couple of words. Technologically, the market is ready. We have brokers, we have Freedom Finance with their background and access to American market. We have a good regulator, two regulators, two exchanges. Everything's so beautiful. We have two big dams. We have EVs. We have local police in beautiful uniform. But the problem is we have no river. We have the embankment, but there is no river of liquidity, no movement in our market. There is movement. All liquidity is in Halyk. Everybody says that. You know, the big mama Samruk Kazana will create this liquidity if they let their subsidiaries into IPO. They let them go to the bride's market and do not interfere with their personal life. The big mama Samruk Kazana, they give away 2 daughters and 1 granddaughter with scandals. 1 granddaughter was taken back into the family with scandals. They don't even recognize their son-in-law. They interfere with the operations. The big mama needs to change. We need to all change the big mama. The most interesting question. Let's start with you, Maxim. So what's happening with the ruble and dollar? What is your forecast until the end of the year? I think that there will be 10 tenge per ruble, 530 for dollar. As for the ruble, it's not for us like ruble tenge. Well, this is not a relevant pair. If we talk about dollar, most likely they will be a strengthening because the rates are growing in dollars, then it will be higher against all other currencies. So, Farhad, people in the north are crazy about the ruble tenge exchange rate. Nothing to buy there with this money. Farhad, what's happening? You know, the treasury, you communicate well. Forecasts is something that, you know, is really difficult to make. Why is there this interaction? Well, you know, the good forecast for tomorrow comes the day after tomorrow. What we think is that the KZT RUB dollar will be at the same level, 450, 460, so you're more optimistic. Sergey, what's happening in Russia? What's happening with ruble? 40 rubles per dollar. So what are the ideas? What are the opinions? What's the difference? I'm serious. Like, it could be 60 kopecks. Who cares? You cannot imagine how a third of the population who work with Russia, they really suffer from that. I've been telling you about the base rate. National companies were borrowing there because their base rate was cheaper. So for some time, for some of our issuers, quasi-state issuers, it was really profitable to borrow and repay. But now the situation is really hard. We need National Bank to look into the situation. Because you see, we have a market exchange rate. But our national bank is so independent and media is so independent. And this is how we live. Independent media, independent national bank who does not depend on anyone. And this is how we live. So what about USD? Will there be a high devaluation? Well, we see that now. It's like last year. Like 10 to 15% the growth was. And about the same indicators I think we can look at. I would really love Farhad's projections to realize 450, 460. In an ideal world, it would go even lower. But, you know, projections are, you know, something that is never rewarded. There is nothing that depends on us. We have no levers. We could have given you some more mindful comments if we had any levers. So eventually the market would go the way it wanted to go. Yeah, to the right. That's right. 30 seconds, Danyar. What about dollar and tenge? Like ruble is now, in fact, a non-convertible currency. Unfortunately, Russia and us, we are in the same plane. We're in business class, they're in couch, but doesn't matter whether you're sitting by aisle or by the window, no place is good in this plane. And National Bank is not very sincere talking about our exchange rate. Our exchange market is not very deep. And even when the National Bank lifts a pinky finger, that gives some ripples on the pond of our market. There is no free exchange. There is no free float of exchange rate in this country, in this economy. Let us not, you know, deceive each other. So Maxim would say, buy now, but so we can buy now and wait for 5.20 for dollar, but what about ruble? Well, the first default happened yesterday. The previous one is 1998. It was sixth by at that time. Let us wish our speaker great success and great luck. We work with them every day. Luck and success to you. Thank you so much.